She rang my doorbell drunk at 11 at night, walked into my kitchen like it was her living room, and then had the gall to lecture me about community standards. Yeah, that happened, and no, it's not the start of a bad joke, it's how my life got interesting again. Let me back up a sec. My name's Dan West. I moved out of Seattle because I couldn't stand the noise, the traffic, the feeling that everyone else's life was a meeting I hadn't been invited to. I wanted quiet, a red brick cottage on an acre and a half in North Carolina, a place with no sidewalks, no streetlights, and crucially no HOA. That last bit wasn't a perk, it was the whole point. For 2 months I did the slow, satisfying work of fixing up the porch, getting the woodshop smelling like cedar, and teaching Max, my rescue mutt with a moral compass of his own, that the mailman was not, in fact, an enemy. I barely knew the neighbors, a nod here, a wave there, the polite distance of a town that still felt human, and then the first cream envelope showed up with a logo that looked like a clip art eagle trying too hard. A welcome packet from Wood Hollow Pines Homeowners Association, all pastel rules, event calendars, and a form to sign away privacy in quarterly installments. I laughed, filed it with other junk, and went back to tiling the guest bath. 2 weeks later, a white letter with a red delinquent stamp told me I owed $480 in dues, to an association whose boundary map didn't include my parcel. My deed was clear, the county records were clear, and that should have been that, but it wasn't. Footprints began to circle the yard at night, deliberate ones, the kind that stop at the back deck as if they're checking for evidence of nonconformity. I upgraded my cameras, stuck motion sensors on every corner, and finished a sign that read private property, no soliciting, and yes, I even glued seriously don't under it, because sometimes humor is the easiest armor. Then people started showing up, not with warrants, just with clipboards, pretending to do community surveys. A woman jogging who took a picture of my porch and fled when I waved. A man crouched in my flower bed pretending to read cracks that don't exist. It felt like being observed by a neighborhood that had confused itself for government. That's when Mark showed up, older, beagle with a limp, the sort of neighbor who'd seen the small-town theater before. "You're in Karen's sights," he said without a preface, like he was handing me a dossier. Karen, the president of Wood Hollow Pines HOA, had a binder, he told me, a real one, full of notes on people's schedules, license plates, and favorite dog names. She walked the neighborhood at night with no flashlight, just a clipboard, and when she decided you belonged to her community, she acted as if the law agreed. That was the first twist I didn't expect. The threat wasn't anonymous, it had a face, a name, and a woman in a windbreaker who thought spreadsheets could substitute for empathy. I handled it the old-fashioned way, paperwork. Certified notices, deed copies, a cease and desist from Aaron Scott, my lawyer, who said in his calm way, "File everything, Dan. If they persist, we litigate." He was right, and yet those letters kept coming, escalating in tone while staying polite in font. My exterior paint violated aesthetics, my tool shed offended line-of-sight symmetry, imaginary crimes dressed in bureaucratic prose. People started lurking, slipping laminated notices into my mailbox at night, and once, unforgettable, someone zip-tied a laminated community enforcement in progress sign to my mailbox post like a passive-aggressive billboard. Then Karen herself came at 10:47 p.m., ring like a scene from a horror comedy, stood on my porch staring at the camera, then walked into my kitchen like she had a legal right to be there. She smelled of alcohol, and she sat on my couch like an entitled guest waiting for tea. She told me in a thick, confident voice that by Section 14 of their bylaws, hand delivery of violation notices was mandatory. I told her the bylaws applied to people who signed them, and she replied glibly, "You're part of the community whether you admit it or not." That was the moment it turned from nuisance to trespass. Max did the job he was born to do. He went into full sentinel mode, while I recorded everything and called 911. The police came, they watched the footage, they administered a breathalyzer, and when the device read 0.114, Karen's empire of paper and pretense collapsed into handcuffs. She walked out with the same defiant posture she used to stride through her meetings, but the officers read her the charges: trespassing, public intoxication, impersonation by falsely claiming authority she didn't have. I stood in my living room watching a woman, who'd made a career of policing hedges, get led to a cruiser, while the neighborhood peered from behind drapes like an audience watching a scene turn into history. And then the real twist, the dam burst. That 10-second clip I uploaded to the neighborhood app blew up. Within hours, people were sharing stories they'd been nibbling at the edges of, violation letters about Christmas lights, fines for excessive mulch, late-night driveway inspections. Even a secret watch list someone pretended was reasonable. A former board member emailed the local paper and later spoke anonymously about checks written for catered dinners and wine tastings labeled as executive development. Valerie posted a blurry photo of Karen shining a flashlight into her living room window at night. A man uploaded a violation demanding his mother move her car because visiting hours apparently attract crime. And a teen turned Karen's street-side flip of a gnome into a meme that lit up the internet. Reporter Tasha, who knocked on my door with a recorder and a look that said she loved this kind of mess, and the paper ran with it. HOA president arrested for breaking and entering, neighbors allege pattern of abuse, which is a headline that tastes like a small town's long-buried truth. That led to county audits, subpoenaed bank statements, and a paper trail that would embarrass a hedge fund. $12,000 in untraceable HOA expenses, line items for executive beverage fund, a rental car for field inspections that translated into late-night surveillance runs, and receipts that looked suspiciously like personal entertainment. Karen tried to spin it, victimhood, overworked guardian of community standards, the usual script, but when your own emails say, leave the pit open, no cones, you stop looking like misinformed and start looking like a danger. She pled out after a preliminary hearing, probation, rehab, restitution, and a permanent ban from holding HOA office in the state. Poetic, if you like justice with paperwork attached. The HOA itself imploded, board members resigned, treasurer disappeared, the clubhouse closed like a stage after the curtains came down, and neighbors, suddenly awake, chose community over compliance. They didn't replace the HOA with a new boss, they replaced it with a picnic table and a tool shed, cooperation instead of coercion, potholes fixed by neighbors who actually cared, a free library and a shared ladder, lemonade on the lawn, and yes, someone even made a spreadsheet to share tools without a single citation issued. It was messy, human, and exactly what I wanted when I left a city that mistook motion for meaning. There was satisfaction in the little things. The county repaved the access road where someone had once considered closing it off. The audit confirmed systemic overreach, and the HOA's website redirected to a blank page that felt about as loaded as a mic drop. I mounted Karen's midnight folder in my memory rather than my mantle, and in its place I put a small sign on my gate, private property, no HOA entry, especially not after 10 p.m. People took selfies with that sign, made jokes, brought t-shirts. And sometimes a neighbor would knock and hand over jam or a loaf of bread and say quietly, "Thanks for doing the weird, hard thing." The porch that had felt like the front line became, slowly, a front porch, the place where neighbors stopped by to borrow a ladder, hand over a casserole, or just sit a spell while Max supervised like a mayor with fur. I repaired the fence, upgraded the intercom to record everything automatically, not out of paranoia, but because the file saved in the cloud had saved me once. And I helped organize a tiny nonprofit to teach neighbors how to log harassment, backup footage, and push for audits when power gets funny. So here's where I leave it. Picture me on that porch at sunset, black tea in hand, Max leaning his weight against my leg, the trees above turning honey gold, and the house quiet in the right way, not empty, not guarded, but calm, reclaimed. We won on paper and we won with neighbors, and it felt like justice and not vengeance, which is a soft, rare thing. But I want to ask you, and don't be polite about it, when a group claims to act for the community, who should decide what the community is? The people who live there, with dirt under their nails and kids making noise, or the clipboard-riding officials who mistake control for care? Tell me your story. Were you ever Karen-ed by a neighborhood tyrant, or did you sit back while something small and awful took root? Drop your experience below. Argue with me if you want. Share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the only way to stop petty tyranny is to record it, stand up, and invite the neighbors to the porch.